Now it's 50 Paces, our two documentaries from the 50s. Dan Farson is your reporter, reporting on mixed marriages and life in a nudist colony. Now, mixed marriages is really about racial prejudice, and it picks up from where Hot Summer Night left off. No TV company would handle the colour problem, as it was called, quite like this today. In a lighter vein, Dan ventures into a nudist colony and asks the question, are nudists out of step with the rest of us? 50 Paces.
Associated Rediffusion presents Daniel Farson, who each week meets and talks about people in trouble.
There are 190,000 colour people in this country. People say that the colour bar is beginning to fade, but I wonder if it is. I think if we were honest with ourselves, that we'd admit it would be a bit of a shock if we were told that our sister or daughter was going to marry a coloured man. With me here is Mr. Jackson from Jamaica,
with his English wife Olive and their 3-year-old son John. An example of an extremely happy and successful mixed marriage.
How long have you been married?
5 years.
And how long had you known each other before you did get married?
3 months. So.
Well, did you discuss all the disadvantages of a mixed marriage in this country?
Well, we didn't talk about it much, really. We both knew that there's a certain amount of prejudice to be combated, but we felt prepared to deal with it as it came along, as best we could.
But what sort of prejudice have you come up against?
Well, to be honest, I must say that we haven't faced any real direct prejudice which you could pin it down and say such and such a thing is prejudice, you know? I mean, you've had people staring at you in buses and things like that, but I don't suppose it's prejudice. I suppose it's bad manners. I'm not quite sure whether it's the welfare state or prosperity that's responsible for that, but it's just bad manners, you know?
And you've no fear that John is going to be prejudiced over here?
I think he might meet with a few little indifferent things, but he'll have to be trained in such a way to get on top of them. See, that's our job, more or less, you know, to get him in the right frame of mind, the right proper breeding that he can overcome the little difficulties which he may find out.
Well, I'm extremely glad that your marriage has been so successful. The Jacksons seem to have been surprisingly lucky, and it may be that colour prejudice is diminishing a bit, but one cannot pretend that it isn't still an extremely strong force. Many widely travelled and intelligent people in this country would be against mixed marriages, such as you, sir, I imagine, Mr. Wentworth Day, and you were, in fact, an advisor to the Egyptian government and the Sudan, so you know what you're talking about.
Well, I've been there and seen them in their own home surroundings. And as a parliamentary candidate, I've been into a good many working-class houses.
Over here?
Where there have been, oh yes, indeed, where there have been many mixed marriages, and I've seen the children. And my view is this, that no first-class nation can afford to produce a race of mongrels. And that is what we're doing. Sooner or later, that's going to come back on the children. Those children are unfair hostages to the future. It's unfair on the children, it's unfair on the nation. It's one of the reasons why France is a third-class nation today. Too much mixed blood. Look at the other angle. The black man, and I refuse this humbug of talking about the colored man, he's black and we're white, has a different set of standards, values, morals, and principles. In many cases, their grandfathers were eating each other. Well, the lion doesn't change his spots in all that time. But look at it this way. They come over here, they cause housing troubles, employment troubles. Ask any landlord of working-class property. Where they go in, the houses become cesspits of dirt.
Now, this is not inevitable.
Very often, if a black man makes a lot of money, what do you find? Again, a lack of taste. He's flashy. He's very often arrogant.
Well, to go back to mixed marriages, which is the specific subject we're talking about, are you implying that a half-caste is in any way mentally deficient?
Definitely.
But there's nothing to prove this at all.
That unfortunate child is born with an inferiority complex. If it isn't born with it, it grows up with it.
You can't possibly say that it's born with an inferiority complex. That's something that we instill into it later.
We may instill it, and also the pure black people may instill it themselves, because they have an instinctive contempt, you know, for what they call white trash.
But if conditions were different, there was not the social prejudice, such as you have, and there were not the practical difficulties, then if two people were in love, wouldn't you recommend them to get married?
Love is a very curious thing. It depends on how you define it. I think a lot of these mixed marriages are caused purely by downright sex or sloppy sentimentality.
Have you got a daughter yourself?
I have a daughter who is young, charming, intelligent, with taste and discrimination.
Well, what would you feel if she said that she was going to marry a colored man?
I should strongly advise her against it. I should give her all the practical reasons why not. I should ask her if she wanted to wake up in the morning and see a coffee-colored little imp on the pillow beside her, calling her mummy. If she did marry him, I should be bitterly disappointed.
Well, I couldn't disagree with you more, but at least you do say what you really feel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Michael Savage is a Nigerian, his grandmother was Scottish, he's ex-public school boy and British Army officer. Now, have you suffered from this sort of prejudice?
Well, I don't think I suffer very much, really.
Well, is that because you've got education and a background?
Yes, I think it is. I think it's sometimes very hard to differentiate between ordinary social prejudices and racial prejudice.
Would you consider marrying a white girl yourself?
Yes.
Do you have any such intentions?
Well, not at the moment, but I shouldn't let... If I wanted to marry a white girl, I should marry a white girl.
Well, now, what would you feel about your children? Would you be afraid that they would meet with any prejudice?
Well, being a product of a mixed marriage myself, and not having suffered over much, I shouldn't feel at all... what's the word?
Well, hesitant.
Hesitant about.
What is the position in Nigeria? Is there also a prejudice there, but the other way around?
Yes, so you get some of the Nigerian families who have been established, the aristocratic Nigerians, who would feel exactly the same way. Again, for social reasons. They don't want their children to marry beneath them. And also now, I think, for semi-political reasons as well.
And they would think it beneath them if they married a white man or white girl?
Yes, I think they would.
In other words, there's no such thing as an instinctive or natural colored prejudice. It's prejudice of ignorance, politics, social background.
Economics, social. In fact, all the usual prejudice you get when you haven't got even color.
Yes, unfortunately. Goodbye. But of course, not all mixed marriages are so successful. Helen, why has your own marriage broken down?
I think one of the main reasons is the Nigerian attitude towards women.
What is
It's
that
almost
attitude?
completely lacking in tenderness and kindness. And a woman is apt to be treated as a chattel, which the majority of British women, who are a little bit independent, don't care for.
How long were you married for?
Almost 4 years.
Well, that's quite a long time, if it was as bad as that.
Well, I have a little boy, excuse me, and I tried to really make my marriage work for his sake.
But wouldn't you say that it was a case of having married the wrong man, not just that he was colored?
Not altogether the wrong man. I think the color question has quite a lot to do with it.
In what way?
Well, it's very difficult to find decent living accommodation.
That's because of public prejudice, you mean?
Yes. You know, many landlords will not let to colored people or to people with mixed marriages. And of course, if you have a child, it's even more difficult. Also, to get them looked after during the day in a day nursery or a private minder. Some people are prejudiced by the fact that the child is a half-caste.
You came across that, did you?
Yes.
What about your family? Did they help you?
Well, I have no parents, but my immediate relatives were very much against it. And I left home. I haven't seen them since.
Well, it isn't your husband's fault that you came across prejudice.
Oh, no. Oh, no, that's not his fault. But his attitude towards me had a lot to do with the breakup of our marriage. As long as you do as you're told, if you go out to work, if you hand over your wages and don't argue, you don't want to take any decisions on your own, it's okay.
Was your marriage successful on the physical side?
Yes. And, of course, of late, it hasn't been because I have no feeling for my husband. He treated me badly physically.
In what way?
He used to kick me, strike me.
But surely your experience is an uncommon one.
It may be, yes.
But of course, one must remember the different country and background where the colored man comes from. And in your case, Nigeria has only been civilized in the last few years, really, hasn't it?
Yes, there is quite that difference between Nigerians and West Indians, because the Nigerians still cling to a large extent to the old tribal ideas with regard to women. And also, there are different eating habits from the way we eat, the type of meals we prepare,
You
and
found
the type of meals they expect.
you found that his background proved too big an obstacle, did you?
Yes, really.
Well, thank you very much. Someone who has strong views on many subjects, including the colour problem, is Lord Altrincham. And I believe you're completely in favour of mixed marriages in spite of all the obvious disadvantages.
Yes, I am. You're quite right, I am. I'm not married myself. I haven't contracted marriage, mixed or otherwise, so I can't speak from personal experience. But I'm sure that I would never be prejudiced on grounds of colour when it came to marrying. I can't imagine being prejudiced on that ground. It seems to me quite ridiculous that anybody should be.
But you might not be, but perhaps your friends would, and your neighbours, and people who would influence your children.
Well, that's the whole trouble, isn't it? I mean, it's this social atmosphere
Yes.
against mixed marriages which creates the problem. It's because people have got a complete bugbear in their minds, a completely unreal idea that mixed marriages are bad, that they create a climate in which it's difficult for children of mixed parentage.
Yes.
But if there weren't the atmosphere, then it would be perfectly normal, just like people with fair hair and dark hair into marrying.
But at the moment, this atmosphere is so strong, one would hesitate to recommend a mixed marriage even to two people who are in love.
Yes. Well, if they're really in love, they won't need to have any recommendation.
No.
They'll actually do it. And the more people that do it, the quicker this beastly atmosphere will be removed.
Well, how do you think we can help remove it?
I think that just those of us who believe in it say so as often as possible. And those of us who fall in love with coloured people get married as quickly as possible.
Now, do you think this atmosphere will change in 50 years or 100
certainly,
years?
Certainly. I think it's changing now, and I think there's a very different atmosphere now from, say, before the war, what I remember. And I'm sure that within the next 50 years it'll have changed dramatically. In fact, it'll be quite normal. The idea of pure race is nonsense. There isn't such a thing as pure race. We're all the results of mixed marriage in the past, and that's why the human race is fairly exciting and fairly interesting. I was arriving in a British Crown colony the other day, and I was given a form to fill in which I was not only asked to state my nationality, which is perfectly reasonable, but also to state my race, which I objected to. But I put the only thing I could, the only accurate thing I could, which was human, and then in brackets, Indo-European subspecies, because that is in fact the accurate description of my race if you're going to talk about race at all.
Yes.
I'm the same race as the Indians.
Yes.
And I'm very proud to be.
It makes a mockery of the whole business.
Makes a mockery of the whole business, doesn't it, really?
Thank you very much for coming along.
Not at all.
We've heard the two extreme points of view of Mr. Wentworth Day and Lord Altrincham. I find it deeply shocking that an enormous number of people in this country would agree with Wentworth Day. And I think one should stress that he seems to be referring to the worst cases of coloured people. There's no good being sentimental about it. Of course, these worst cases do exist, but they are a minority. However, one can be too enlightened about the subject. However much one would like things to be, one has to face the fact that there is this great social prejudice and all the practical difficulties. In fact, I cannot honestly say that I am really in favour of mixed marriages. But that is because things are as they are, and I can only hope that they will change.
People in Trouble is an Associated Rediffusion production.